Hi, Dr. Alex here, and welcome to the promised part 2 of the marvelous musical mayhem of modifying a Gibson ES-335 knockoff. Now, I have to be honest, I actually finished most of the modifications within 1 or 2 days of finishing the first video. I just didn't get around to making this video because I was distracted by other projects in time and space, so to speak. As you can see from the intro, the guitar is fully modded and finished, and playing through my Amp Plug 2 Vox AC30 mini amp into my two portable 1x12 Celestion speaker cabinets. And you already have the idea that this thing is working pretty damn well, and I would class it as a successful set of modifications carried out. Now, at the end of this video, much like the first video, I will run through playing the guitar in various different pickup positions at various different volumes, just to give an idea of how it plays. But as you can probably already tell from the intro, as I said, it is playing exactly pretty much as I would expect, with one or two little minor quibbles, which I'll talk about towards the end. But without further ado, let's run through the modifications, how they were made. This is roughly going to be in the order in which I made them. And I'll hopefully, by the magic of video editing, be plastering still images of the various different stages of the modifications which I took on the way through. In addition, if I forget to say anything, hopefully I'll be putting handy little subtitles over the top, so any points I miss will suddenly be rendered in beautiful gold text for all to enjoy. So, step 1 in the modifications was, in fact, the scalloping of the neck, because I took the strings off and got to work scalloping. And I'm going to have to do a magical jump cut to bring my amazing device, which I used. So bear with me 1 second. Hopefully I've just jumped back in with my trusty stick with emery cloth. This is the tool I used to do the scalloping. It's a wooden stick with bits of emery cloth taped to it so I could sand away easily and at well-controlled angles between the frets to get the scalloping I was after. Here's the wider one, and here is the narrow one. And when the frets get too narrow, this gets discarded, and then I would use emery cloth folded and just do it very carefully with my hands and fingers only. Fascinating tale of scalloping over. You can see it was a fairly shallow job, and it works exactly as I'd like. I don't come into contact with the wood as much. Vibrato, pitch bends are all much easier. So this couples with the third modification I'll mention, which I'll talk about in a minute, which again made it much easier to play. But let's go to the second mod. Because I'd obviously removed the strings in order to scallop the neck, the next sensible thing to do would be to actually mount the Bigsby tremolo. So that's what I did before ever going anywhere near stringing it, because you need to have the bridge in place and the tailpiece before you can string the guitar. There was a slight delay at this point though, because after scalloping the neck, I did then varnish it, of course, and the varnish I bought took nearly 2 days to dry. So that did slow my project down legitimately. This wasn't just me faffing around with other videos. I had to wait for the varnish to dry. The plus side of this incredibly slow varnish was it apparently only needs 1 coat, so it was at least a 1-coat varnish, but it did take forever to dry. But anyway, got there in the end. So next, I attached the Bigsby tremolo, which was very smooth. Given this is not actually a true Bigsby, this is just a cheap Chinese knockoff got off eBay, much like the guitar in a way, so it seems appropriate. So I fixed that on very quickly, very easily. Many of the Bigsby mounting videos I've seen involve putting pads under the Bigsby to make sure it's dead straight so the thing flows smoothly and that the axles are absolutely true. This I just mounted straight onto the body of the guitar and mounted it around the rear strap post as well. That actually acted as one of the mounting points, and it was absolutely dead straight and true from the get-go with no felt underneath it between it and the body. It was easy as pie, because we all know pie is very, very easy. Anyway, as I say, the tremolo is incredibly smooth, even though it isn't a real Bigsby. So loose and smooth in its action, in fact, that I forgot that it had no strings on at various points, picked up the guitar, and had the tremolo on go flop, and the spring fly across the room, and the little seating washers fly across the room as well. So I had to go recovering bits of the tremolo system on more than one occasion as I forgot that it hadn't got any strings on. I'd pick it up, and the thing would go flop, spring, patoying everywhere. great. What fun I had. Anyway, eventually I got wise to this and stopped throwing bits of the guitar all over the room. So Bigsby in place, the next thing obviously I needed to do was string the guitar. So I stuck my favoured 8s on, and basically that was it. Stretched in the strings, got it all tuned up, and that would have been it, except for the way that they expect you to string them and the way I ended up stringing them. So this ended up being strung twice, but I'll come on to that in a moment. So before I go on to the restringing saga, I'll now talk about one other modification I made, which was I removed the pickguard. Now, the only reason I removed the pickguard really initially was for superficial cosmetic reasons. I wanted it to look like Ritchie Blackmore's famous Gibson ES-335 as much as possible, and he removed his pickguard. So I just removed it for that aesthetic alone. However, once I'd done it, I suddenly discovered it actually made a significant difference to the ease of playing the guitar. And this took me by surprise, because I didn't expect it to make any difference at all. And so I did a little investigation of how I was playing it and why it would make a difference. It turns out that when I play the guitar, sometimes, not all the time, but occasionally I bridge my hand on the body of the guitar while I'm playing various solos or various particular styles, so that these two fingers, little finger and the one next to it, are actually resting on the body of the guitar sometimes when I'm playing. And I didn't realize how much I did this or how much of an effect it would have, but with the pickguard removed, suddenly, instead of bridging against the pickguard, as I found I must have been doing when I wasn't entirely comfortable with it, suddenly they were at the normal angle. By normal angle, I mean the angle at which I'd be using my hand if I was playing the Strats, because there's no pickguards on those, and me bridging against the body of the guitar is at the same angle all the time. So this suddenly became way easier to play, had a much more profound effect than I was expecting. This, what I assumed was a cosmetic change, actually turned out to have a practical, beneficial effect to my playing. Okay, so that's all the mods done essentially at that point, except now we come on to some very strange tremolo issues that I wasn't expecting to have to deal with, but there were some nagging doubts at the back of my mind even as I put this together and strung it the first time. And this all comes back in the end to my Audition Teisco semi-acoustic guitar from the 60s, late 60s, and its trem system and how it works. But anyway, I'll now describe why the Gibson clone, the Raleigh clone here, gave me pause in my stringing expectations and gave me cause to actually change the way I strung it. So once it was strung and set up, the tremolo felt a little stiff and sticky, and I got to looking at how they'd recommended, or how they expect you to string the guitar, which is the ends of the strings go around the posts on the tremolo axle, they then go under a tensioning axle and then back over the bridge. And this all looked very high tension to me, or a lot more pressure on the bridge than I would expect or was necessary, particularly given the Audition doesn't have that. It goes straight from the tremolo axle to the bridge, and there's nothing in between, no tension, there's nothing increasing the angle. So I immediately began to think, is that really necessary? Then I looked online, and there were several videos where people talked about their actual Gibson ES-335s and their Bigsby tremolos and how they all don't bother stringing them under the tensioner. They just go over the top, which means it's not in any contact with the tensioner at all. It's literally coming off the tremolo axle and then missing that tension altogether and going straight to the bridge. I did that, and again, the effect was quite profound. The smoothness of the tremolo was much improved, and its tendency to stick vastly reduced. This leads me on to another issue that isn't just because this was a non-Bigsby tremolo. This is apparently a common problem with Bigsby tremolos themselves, which is the spring that comes with the tremolo. The spring on this tremolo bar originally, and on all Bigsbys apparently, is so stiff you could use a pair of them on the back axle of a Trans Am and you'd be perfectly safe going over speed humps. It was ridiculously stiff. I mean, even when I restrung it to miss out the tensioner, it was just not a nice smooth tremolo because this thing was so immobile, so unable to be squished. And I did take the spring out and stamp on it about 30, 40, 50 times on the floor, which apparently is a recognised way to soften up your tremolo spring for a Bigsby. But this still made marginal difference to it. Then, in another useful video, I'll link all of these videos in the description, I discovered that people were often buying these Reverend Soft Touch springs to use in their Bigsbys. And the spring, you can tell, has got a slightly narrower gauge, but also is much, much more loosely wound than the tremolo that came with it.
It's an 1116. They only have one.
I knew it was to hand. This is the god-awful, incredibly stiff tremolo spring that came with it. So anyway, the Reverend Soft Touch tremolo spring was a vast improvement. It's so easy to make the trem move and to get it to return to us a roughly same position when it's finished. Again, I'll come back to that, returning it to the same position in a moment as well. Now, I would recommend buying one of these Reverend Soft Touch tremolo springs if you are having trouble with your Bigsby tremolo, because it is amazing, but kind of pricey. It was about £12, £12, which is a lot for a single spring on a tremolo system. And with hindsight, although I recommend their spring, it does the job. It's exactly what they promised it would be. It looks very similar to the Teisco/Audition tremolo spring that was already on my original guitar, my semi-acoustic. And you can buy those tremolo springs, even with the tremolo bar coming with it, for half the price of the Reverend Soft Touch tremolo springs. So if I was doing this again, I would probably just buy a Teisco tremolo arm and spring and use that spring instead, because it'll probably have the same effect. So as I say, with this final modification done, missing out the tensioner, I then added a headstock string dampener to the strings between the tremolo axle and the bridge, so that any additional resonance was cut down at that point at that part of the guitar. One final Bigsby note. It seems that even now, with its super lubrication and everything set up perfectly, it still doesn't want to return naturally to its original tuned position. Now, if you let go, it'll get close, but it won't be exactly in tune as it was before. You have to place it back into the position you originally moved it from. This is in stark contrast to, say, the floating trems on your Stratocasters, or even the similar, and perhaps more relevant, Bigsby-esque trem system on the Audition semi-acoustic that I mentioned before. That one, you can wang it all over the place, and it will, if you let go, return to the in-tune position, as will the tremolos on the Stratocasters. This, on the other hand, it might return to the in-tune position if you're lucky, but generally you have to actually place it there at the end of your tremolo or vibrato session while you are playing. Now you might say, oh, this is just your tremolo, it's too sticky, it's too stiff, but this is a very loose, free running tremolo setup. I mean, it's incredibly loose. It has no sticking issues at all, but it does not want to return to the same position every time. And in fact, if you watch most videos where people are discussing how amazing and smooth their Bigsbys are, and then demonstrate the tremolo in action using it for vibrato, etc., you will notice that they generally finish their vibrato or their trem use with the hand back in the position where it was in tune, and then they will release the tremolo if they want to continue playing something without the tremolo in it. They are basically using their ears to ensure that they've got it back to the in-tune position before they let the tremolo go. As far as I can see, all of these Bigsbys Are So Awesome videos, they seem to use it the same way. I don't see anyone using a bit of tremolo and then letting go and hoping it's back in the same position. They always do a nice soft bit of tremolo and then finish and make sure they've got it back in tune again. I would say this is a feature of Bigsby tremolos. Now, I can already hear the objections of Bigsby aficionados saying, this isn't the same type of tremolos you get on a Stratocaster. You have to play it with a different technique. And that's fair enough as far as it goes. I mean, that may well be true. That's essentially what I'm saying. You have to employ a slightly different technique when using a Bigsby. However, it is nonetheless a little irritating that you can't just let go of the trem and it will go bang straight back into the in-tune position. And I would say this is an undeniable weakness of the Bigsby tremolo. If I were going to do this again, I might not replace it with a Bigsby. I might actually get, from eBay again, one of these replacement tremolo systems for a Teisco or Audition guitar, like the semi-acoustic I've already shown you before. Because that trem system, while it looks lightweight and cheap and flimsy, does actually do what you expect it to. You can move the tremolo around quite a bit with some vigor, maybe not as much as with a Stratocaster, but with a fair amount of freedom of movement. And if you let go, it will return to in tune. So I would perhaps at your own risk recommend, instead of getting a Bigsby, just go onto eBay and get a replacement tremolo for a Teisco guitar and use that instead. And indeed, if I have sufficient time and motivation, I might myself buy one of those Teisco replacement trems and just swap out the trem on this for, well, just to see if it's any better than the Bigsby. And I suspect it might be. Needless to say, if I make that modification, you'll get a third video in this series. Okay, well, I guess I've yammered on long enough about the modifications I made and how successful or otherwise they were. Now I guess I'll have to do the demonstration of the guitar in the various different pickup positions at various different volumes as promised. So here goes. So there you have me messing about at various different volume levels, at various different pickup positions, and you get an idea that the guitar plays very well. But you will have noticed that whenever I'm using the tremolo bar, when I do let go, it's 50-50 whether it's going to be back in tune or not. And if I'm being careful when I'm using the tremolo, then I will make sure that I've put it back in position. And there are points where I'm experimentally playing the guitar to see if it's still in tune, and then we'll subsequently further adjust the trem bar to make sure I really have got it back in tune again. So this is the feature / weakness / irritating problem of Bigsby tremolos, as far as I can tell. You have to have a good ear, and you have to be able to put it back in tune manually, or make sure it's bang on in tune manually, because you cannot rely upon it returning to the in tune position exactly. Unlike, more or less, you can do with the Strat floating trems and even the Audition / Teisco Bigsby-ish trems. All of them seem more reliable than an actual Bigsby. So this is the end of the main section of the video. However, while messing around making this video, I made an accidental discovery. As you can see, I'm using the Vox Amp Plug 2 AC30 going straight into these two portable 1x12 cabinets here. And it's plenty loud enough to do a recording without irritating the neighbours, and sounds pretty good. Although I have noticed there's a little bit of buzz coming from one of these two cabinets, so I'm going to have to try and identify what's causing it, because I know it's not the speakers, they're both fine. I checked them out recently, but there's something in one of the cabinets that's buzzing from time to time, so I'm going to have to hunt that down. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is this works very well. But then I got to thinking, what would happen if I took the output from this, which is currently going to those two speakers, and instead fed it into the return on a main full-sized amplifier, in this case one of my Marlin Reverb 50 amps. So yeah, it has an effects loop input and output, i.e. send and receive, and I thought, what if I put this straight into the receive on that big amp? And I'll just turn the thing to show what I'm talking about. So hopefully you can see me and the amplifier. So on the back of here there's a send and receive, and I plugged, reaching over and grabbing it, plug the Vox output into the receive portion of the effects loop on the main amp, just to see whether it would sound acceptable, whether it would be loud, which anyone would probably guess it would be loud, but the effects were surprising to say the least. So I'm going to go straight on and make another video immediately after this detailing what happens when you plug a Vox AC30 Amp Plug 2 into essentially the power amp section of a full-size amplifier. And some of this I may have to do with ear defenders, and it may be done in my shed. But anyway, to catch that, you'll have to catch the next video. So for now, thank you for checking out the modifications I made to the Gibson ES-335 clone, and I hope you enjoyed both the discussion of the mods and the little bits of playing I did to demonstrate how it now sounds. And that just leaves me to say thank you for tuning in and listening and watching, and I hope to see you in the next video, whatever that may be. It may well be me blowing up my main amplifier. And that only leaves me then to say, take care.